The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. I have Tonya Fines here with me today. We are going to have an amazing conversation about how to age gracefully and pivot and make changes so that you can feel amazing into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So Tonya is a board-certified holistic health practitioner with the American Association of Drugless Practitioners with over 25 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. And I want her to share a little bit of background because it is amazing. So she's going to do that next. Specializing in nutrition, fitness, and hormonal health of women who are 35 years and older. Tonya combines a wealth of knowledge with a passion for empowering women to achieve optimal health and well-being. Tonya, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you for having me. It feels a little different being on this side of the microphone.
Doesn't it? I know. Well, so tell us, give us a background about you, but then tell us about your podcast. Like, I think that's amazing. The more that we can share all this amazing health information, the better we all are. So tell us about you first.
Okay, well, I'm actually my least favorite topic, but why I like to interview other people. So I've always been health, fitness, wellness inclined. I was always that weird little girl that was kind of looking at plants and thinking, oh, I wonder what this, if this, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? So I always just had that sort of inclination to be, healthy and well. I think that the term really is wellness. Like, you want a strong body, you want a strong mind, you just feeling really good. And so that took me, I was always very active in sports, very, dancing was my love. So I danced for many years and competed and stuff. Then when I did go to university, I ended up focusing on the sciences. So I went to university and graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education and Biology because I was just really into the whole fitness and wellness. And my career actually started as a high school teacher, teaching health sciences and some algebra, and all of the fun stuff. But it was when I started having my own family that I wanted to, be a stay-at-home mom. But I wasn't really ready to not do something.
Right.
And I eventually started up my own health and wellness company in Fort St. John, BC, Canada, and moving to New Zealand, taking the company there, living there for 4 years, shifting more into like one-on-one coaching, working primarily with post-competitor athletes, women who had competed, because I had spent at that point about 9 years competing. I represented New Zealand. I was on the New Zealand national team.
Amazing.
And went to worlds and universes and all that. Had lots of fun, but then it was time to put that away. And really that then again was another shift in like, wow, there's this whole mindset in athleticism, whatever your goal is. And for me, it was that, getting up on stage and doing women's figure. And there's a certain route you take to hit a goal for stage day. And it's, it has to do with your nutrition. It has to do with your fitness to hit a very unsustainable goal for one day. You want to hit a certain point on that day. And what I found, like with myself included, was when you come off of that, there's something, in your mind, it's like, I want to still look like that, but I don't want to do that kind of work to maintain. I want to have a piece of cheesecake once in a while, or I want to have a glass of wine with my dinner once in a while. So it had the whole mental part of it, psychological part of it came in. And that kind of opened up where I really wanted to work, or I ended up working with a lot of females that had competed. And really, we needed to kind of reset their mind and their focus and how they felt about their bodies and nutrition and what to do to feel good, focus on the feeling of it. So then I ended up, I'm now here in Tampa, Florida. I was working with a company, Critical Bench, and that's a company that I do. They have a
Oh,
podcast,
yes.
a great podcast channel. You Are Strong by Design. And so I do podcast interviews with guests and interview
Amazing.
them on all kinds of topics, mostly health and wellness. But
Yep.
that in a nutshell is me.
Amazing. Well, just what you went through, I mean, 9 years of competing, because that is such huge self-discipline,
Yeah.
right? To be able to hit that goal at the right time, to be able to achieve what you have and where you went, but then also be able to recover, because that is really hard on the body, right?
It really is. I mean, first of all, it's a second full-time job.
Yep.
And my family was still young, and they needed full-time moms. So I was managing that with starting up my business in a new country.
Yeah.
And then really kind of, working, because my goal was, when I got to New Zealand, I'm like, my goal is by the second year, I want to make the national team. And so huge time commitment, huge focus, and yet a lot of discipline. And what I will say is, if you are somebody that is struggling, if you have food issues or body dysmorphia, it's not probably the best choice
Right.
of sports to go into, because it can certainly, and I'm not saying that's true of everybody, but it can sort of be a catalyst to heighten that. But also, at the time that I was doing, I mean, I was very lucky. I had very good coaches that actually went working towards up to stage day. They also started having the conversations with, okay, that day when you get off of stage, here's what we're going to do with your nutrition. So I had really good guidance in helping me, like, getting back from that, what was going to happen, what I could expect, how I was going to feel, that I was going to gain weight, but then what our plan was, because I always, like, for that length of time, I knew I wanted to compete for at least a good solid 5 years.
Yep.
And, what was going to be my next competition? How then were we going to build back up to that? And then how was I going to reverse out of that? So I got very lucky, but that is not, I think it's more common now. But, 10, 15 years ago, I don't know that it was that common, because a lot of what I saw when I went into the one-on-one coaching was that a lot of these women were coming out of competition and just blowing up, because you're rebounding huge way, and then, depression and feeling really bad about themselves, and then doing the reverse opposite and dieting, going back to the gym and working themselves to death and not eating. And that starts a whole other cycle of dis-ease in the body.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, there needs to be a lot more education and coaching for this genre.
Yep. I agree. And I mean, I have come across, figure competitors that have had a lot of those problems, to be honest. Right. And the other problem that I have come across just in that specific realm, and we'll kind of talk through this, but is the microbiome. Right. We talk about the GI, because I think, again, depending on how they're doing it, and you made a statement that's super important. You had great coaches, right? You can't, and it's the same with health, right? We always need someone to hold us a little bit accountable. We always need someone to give us a little extra information to kind of get to that next level of whatever we want to do, right? And I think that's super important.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt that I would have, if I didn't have the kind of coaching that I had. And at the time, I was doing some coaching. I was doing more health and wellness coaching. I had a lot of males and females just coming in and actually just wanting, how to make better lifestyle choices, meal prepping and just things like that. So I was already working one-on-one with other people. But I wasn't really working a lot one-on-one with other athletes, because as a coach, it's kind of like, we hear people like that say like, doctors, you could have a really great doctor, but that doctor isn't necessarily going to diagnose and treat himself. He'll likely go to another respected physician in his field. And I was the same way. I was like, well, first of all, if I believe in coaching and I believe in the value of it, it would be a little bit hypocritical of me to just dismiss it when I clearly, could use coaching to up my game, because I had a very specific goal. I wanted to make that team.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be invited to worlds, and I wanted to be invited to universes. And I wasn't going to be able to do that on my own with all my other responsibilities.
Yeah.
So, having that accountability was fantastic, because it did keep me in check. And along the way, it helped, because when you get to the point, for me, it was usually somewhere around 8 weeks where starting to strip those few extra bits of body fat, really lean out and do it slowly. It does have an effect on the brain and how you think and your logic and your emotions. So I would, still, even though with great coaching, emotions were all over the map. It did help that I had somebody to go, okay, this is the goal that you wanted, and this is how we're going to get there. So this is what's happening right now. You have to understand that, it was just the comfort level of having that person. And when you don't have that person, it can be you could just be left hanging on this thread and not knowing. And then that is what can be a catalyst for springboarding you into decisions that really end up harming you, because sometimes, like talking about, the gut and GI health, the long-term recovery, if you want to do it sort of holistically and slowly to allow the body to do what it can do, that can be the difference of like, several months to a couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so what would you say, and because I want to ask you just with regards to holistic kind of medicine, health, what that means to you, but what would you say one of the biggest, like when you started working with that age group and some of those competitors, what was the biggest challenge that you saw them have based on just working with now a coach that, was a little bit more holistic from that perspective? Was one of the biggest challenges that maybe they hadn't thought about or done before?
I think one of the a couple challenges, and definitely putting themselves first. And particularly, I think I'm not to dismiss the men.
Yeah.
But as women, mothers, nurturers, caretakers, we tend to put ourselves after everybody else. So that was a big challenge, to be like, okay, if you're coming to see me and you want to hire me and you want to work with me, you're paying for this. So you have to be able to make the time to make yourself a priority in this process. Because if you don't, it's going to be really difficult for me to help you and for you to actually achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And then after that, a lot of it was like the mindset, because especially somebody, we call it, when somebody first starts out in the bodybuilding world, we call it like the newbie gains. When you get into that zone and that kind of nutrition and the meal planning and the prepping and the macro tracking and then the training, if you haven't been very physical or you did something very different your whole life, when you start to do that and you're very consistent in doing it like 5-6 days a week, you typically start to notice changes pretty quickly. When you're new to it, and it's like, wow, like it's very easy to stay motivated at the beginning, because you're noticing like my shoulders are growing. I see some abs, like, oh my, I'm getting some quad definition. Like it's really cool. And then at the end of all of that, going back into like called the normal, like the maintenance stage or sustainable, if they're not seeing, depending on how they were coached and what possible damage, we'll call it damage or metabolic adaptations have happened, when a client is not seeing those kinds of quick results, it can be very discouraging,
Right.
very difficult to keep them in the program. So a lot of times it's like, okay, remember, this is where you were. But look at this, your blood sugar has stayed the same for the last 3 weeks, which is a huge win. I know the scale's not moving exactly the way you want to, but your blood sugar has been stable. You're sleeping through the night. You're back to the gym, and your recovery from your workouts is amazing. Like these are all things that continually having to point out to the client if they don't see the needle moving the way they think it should be moving, because there's a lot of things happening inside the body that are huge wins, but don't necessarily equate to a number somewhere that you can measure it that way. And we get trained to like step on the scale and, okay, yay, it's a low number, or, oh my gosh, it's a big number, you know?
Yep. It's 100% true. Yeah, 100% true. And I think that too, I remember years ago, I'd done a discussion with a little bit of a media, because they were attempting to think about removing the scales from the university gym for the women. And, I mean, for me, being a different competitor, obviously, than you, but still, I had to maintain my weight class. Right. So
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
so it wasn't about, and so, our comment, there was a few of us on the panel, wasn't about removing it. It was about teaching us the proper mindset to
Right.
utilize it in a way that it should be utilized. Right. And not beating ourselves up. Um, and yeah, so I think, and mindset's interesting because, whenever you have a goal, it doesn't matter if it's sports or something, but the mind is, kind of that main driver.
Exactly. It's a very powerful influencer,
Yeah.
and it can also be a very powerful saboteur.
Yep. Absolutely.
And and that's again why, having the coaching, or even just somebody in your corner who's able to, grab your focus and go, okay, let's just reset here for a second. Like, let's have a conversation. And sometimes that's all that's needed.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it's a whole team. I have clients where it's the one, like, we're doing our thing and it's really great. And every once in a while I got to bring them back in and go, okay, we're going to have this conversation again. And others, it's like, a team, they're working with a certain specific, nutrition person because of other health issues, or, they've got their trainer, and it's sort of like this team effort, which is really great,
Yeah.
but mindset is incredibly, and I know sometimes it gets thrown around. People think, oh, there you're talking like that fluffy talk of mindset, but it's so incredibly true.
Hmm.
When I set a goal to make the national team, I think it was 4 years before that, I had been diagnosed later in life with a form of spina bifida. I had been involved in kickboxing and taekwondo and was loving that. And then I ended up laid up in bed for almost 2 months.
Wow.
Very difficult time, unable to move for several weeks,
Hmm.
on a lot of medication, and then being told, well, you have to give that type of sport up. And I thought, okay, but I'm not giving up sports. And then being told that, well, you can, you can do training, but don't have any lofty goals of becoming or doing anything. And I'm just not wired that way. If I'm
Yeah.
going to do something, there has to be some kind of finish line.
Hmm.
So, being told, don't even attempt to hit that level, and then going on to actually compete at those higher levels. So the mind it's pretty strong, and it can push you forward, and it can beat you down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important fact. And I think a lot of people miss that piece when we're talking about holistic health, or right in general.
Yeah.
It is one of the pillars, and it gets overlooked and kind of underappreciated sometimes, but it can sabotage us pretty heftily, right? When we're thinking about certain things. And so tell me about, like, so we talk about, I want to get into some of the age groups with regards to aging gracefully, and how do we do that, and what are some of the changes that we have to make. And so from a holistic perspective, right, tell us what that means to you, from not even just holistic medicine, but just holistic wellness, if you will.
Right. Well, I think for a long, I think it's taken, I believe, I feel now like the term holistic is being a little um, more embraced seriously.
Yep.
Because I think for many years it was kind of thrown on like holistic. It was very like, oh, if you just put it out there and say you want to be well, you're going to be well, or
Right.
involved like just eating flowers, and just that people thought was like really weird, and how
Yep.
could it possibly work? So when I look at holistic, I look at it as being very much a part of like our Western medicine, because that has its place as well. But holistic, at least in what I do, I look at it as like, when I'm working with somebody, I'm interested in how they feel completely. Like,
Yep.
how do they feel physically? How are they feeling emotionally? Are they getting enough rest? Like, do they wake up in the morning most days of the week? Because we all have off days. I mean, that's
Yes.
part of holistic health. The reality is that sometimes you just have some really lousy days and you don't feel like doing anything.
Yeah.
But overall, are you feeling really good? Because it's about maintaining a state of optimal health. And
Mhm.
that does change through our life. The way that, the kind of energy, if you remember the kind of energy you have in your teens versus your 20s, and as you get older, it does change. And it's supposed to change.
Mhm.
Our bodies are biologically designed to, having women having children and going through that, having being pregnant and all of that at a younger age. It's not, there are definitely people that have we used to call them the change of life babies. It can
Yeah.
happen,
Yep.
but ideally it's meant to happen in your younger years. And that's because the body's just in that position of health.
Mhm.
But then when that passes, it doesn't mean that, well, menopause is approaching, so that's it. Well, no, that's not it. It just means it's a transition into a different phase of living optimally.
Yep.
And the needs of your body are going to change. A lot of things are going to change. Hormone levels are going to change.
Yeah.
So it's about being aware. I always say to people, your body is the most insanely accurate and wonderful biofeedback system you'll ever have. So if you're really in tune to that and paying attention, your body's going to tell you things.
Mhm.
Like all of a sudden, I have trouble now with things that have garlic in them. Garlic,
Mm.
I'm half Ukrainian. I grew
Yep.
up eating garlic my whole life. Everything, every dressing, every marinade,
Yep.
everything, garlic butter, garlic bread, all that stuff. And now I just can't. And as
Yeah.
much as I would still like to have it, it's something I have to pay attention to. It
Mhm.
completely, my GI system goes berserk when I have it. So, I
Wow.
mean, that's a funny example, but there's other examples of things that are happening that I think sometimes can get brushed off as like, well, it just happens. That's just when you get older, this happens. Well, true, but it doesn't mean that that has to be the way you have to live the rest of your life. You shouldn't have to live the rest of your life with lousy sleep, with no energy, with feeling depressed all the time, not able to enjoy foods that you like, or having to eat chicken and broccoli for the rest of your life. Um, Life, I think, at any phase can be fulfilling
Mhm.
and joyful, and you can feel great at it as long as you're willing to accept there's going to be changes. And what do you have to do in your life to make the adjustments to enjoy a full, happy life with optimal health as you continue to age?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I think you said, "Oh, I'm just getting older." Right? That statement just in general, it drives me crazy
Right.
because I feel like it's not untrue, right? I mean, right, we're all going to get older biologically, but it drives me crazy because I feel like people use it as a crutch, right?
Oh,
It's
sure.
like it's like the excuse of why something's happening. It's like, well, that's okay. I'm just getting older. I'm tired. It's all right. I'm just getting older. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's not okay to be tired, right? Like there are so many things that you can do to be able to not feel that way. And so as we kind of approach that age, what are some of the things well, let's start with nutrition and then we'll kind of go to even the exercise realm of things where it can really enhance that time as women start to approach the menopause and things are changing, hormones are changing. How do we, from a food perspective, because I mean, one of the main things that a lot of women deal with during menopause is weight gain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Stubborn
It
weight
does,
gain.
it does happen, and
Yeah.
weight will creep up on you.
Hmm.
And there is no quick fix. Again, it's not just a simple equation, because if you were largely inactive
Hmm.
going into menopause, that's going to have an effect as you go through it. So, I mean, metabolically, our metabolism starts to slow down. However, let's see if I can say this without confusing it.
Yeah.
Typically, as we do get older, I call it marinating. We're just marinating. You know,
I love that.
you
That is
know,
awesome. I'm so going to
marinating.
use that.
And getting older doesn't mean getting old. It just, we do get older. We're aging, and there's a lot of wonderful things about that. Like when I think
Yep.
of myself today versus some of the things that I believed or felt or tolerated in my 20s and 30s, I'm like, man, I wish I'd had
Mm,
the experience. But anyways,
yep.
so, you know, on average, and this isn't, again, I'm not painting with a broad brush, but on average, both men and women tend to, as we get a little older and we don't have the same kind of energy, we tend to move less.
True.
Um, we don't necessarily adjust our caloric intake based on that. We still eat the same or close to the same,
Mm-hmm.
although we're moving less. We also tend to, and I'm sorry, women, but it's more, I see it more with women, tend to have a little more wine,
Oh,
in the
yes.
evenings
Yeah.
and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
when you, and those are not, none of those things are necessarily terrible, bad things. But when you take that and you put them together, you kind of have a recipe for, well, okay, I am getting older. I'm perimenopausal or premenopausal, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gaining weight.
Yep.
Then I would say, what are you doing like day to day? What's changed from your 20s, 30s, whatever, to now?
Yep.
And if it's, eating the same amount or sometimes eating less in volume, but what you're consuming is much higher in calorie,
Right.
quicker, higher, high calorie foods, not necessarily nutritionally dense calories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe drinking a little bit more,
Yep.
having that glass of wine in the evening and reading a book or watching a show and
Yep.
not moving as much.
Mm-hmm.
Those are three relatively, like, they're not catastrophic things in that I had an accident and I'm in a body cast and I can't move for 3 months. These
Right.
are just lifestyle behaviors that need to be tweaked.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
And I think sometimes, and you're right, it's not about, so none of them are completely catastrophic, but pile them all together. And then
yeah.
we may have an answer to the question that where it keeps coming up, which is like, oh, this stubborn weight, I can't get rid of it. I can't lose weight, and so all those things kind of end up adding up to that,
Yeah,
which is
they can.
interesting.
And I've been working with the client and she's just absolute sweetheart.
Hmm.
And so she had this goal coming in and she was not a very big person to begin with, but she had a goal. She wanted to lose X amount of pounds. And I thought, okay, okay. But that was, like I said, okay, we will talk about that. But first there's all, we're looking at her labs and
Yeah.
looking at her biofeedback. And I'm like, okay, here's some other things I think that we really need to address first, because ultimately you do not feel good day to day.
Yep.
Like you feel like garbage every single day. And it sounds like you're really sick and tired of feeling sick and tired.
Yep.
And she was. And so she was very diligent with her program, recommended some just good supplementation for her based
Mhm.
on her lifestyle. Young, still had a fairly young family and was busy and a lot of traveling. So some supplementation, because she couldn't always be home to have a square meal or whatever,
Yep.
cook something.
Yep.
And actually lowering her training intensity a bit,
Oh, okay.
and just monitoring like steps, making sure every day she was doing some type of like between 8 to 10,000 steps. I think
Hmm.
that's really important for women physically and mentally.
Hmm.
And so it took about, let's see, this has been about 4 months. And I had probably one of the best conversations with her a couple of weeks ago, because I was checking in, because I do all my one-on-one check-ins with my clients on Mondays.
Hmm.
And I was just like, how are you doing? And I had noticed she hadn't put anything in her chart, like as in terms
Mm.
of tracking her macros.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? I am just feeling so good that I don't want to track the macros. I kind of want to let go of that desire to lose the X number of pounds. I can't remember how much it was, because she really didn't need to lose it. She looks great.
Yeah.
But something shifted in her mindset, and how she just started to feel so much better, that all of a sudden this goal of, well, I got to drop X number of pounds, because if I drop X number of pounds, I'm going to feel better and I'm going to look better, or I'm going to look better, so I'm going to feel better.
Yeah.
When a client actually authentically starts to feel that good, a lot of that falls by the wayside,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. I think back just with regards to, comments and especially when I was coaching at the gym, you got that a lot. And then once they started loving the movement that they were doing and they felt better, right? Maybe they had a little bit of results, but yeah, you're right. It was like all of a sudden the goal of the weight loss moved into the goal of something else,
Yes.
right? I
Yeah.
want to lift this, or I want to do this how many times, or, whatever the case might be. I always found that really interesting to watch that shift happen
Mhm.
at the gym for sure. And so, what about when we talk about exercise, right?
Mm,
Obviously, movement is so important.
yes.
And so you mentioned, kind of decreasing the intensity of things at certain ages or whatever. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what does that look like from a again, very general. If you guys want coaching and training, you need to reach out to Tonya. Okay. We're just doing very general here, just so
Very
you have an
general.
idea. Yeah.
Right. So generally speaking, a lot of the clients I get, like I work with women.
Mhm.
Pretty much that's just how it is. So
Yeah.
I like that, and because you don't have a lot of men coming in, they're like, well, I really, men always want to bulk up and gain. You don't get a lot of men coming in like, I need to lose 20 pounds. They're like,
Yeah.
I want to gain 20 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
Women, it's different. So when I mention reducing the intensity, most of the clients that come into us
Mhm.
they have been and are possibly still in this cycle of extreme dieting and extreme training.
Ah, okay.
So they're in this cycle of doing too much and not fueling their bodies. And then they
Right.
wonder why they can't lose weight, why they can't sleep, why they just feel like crap, you
Yep.
know? And they come in at such a caloric deficit already. It's like, okay, I understand you want to lose weight, but I cannot possibly put you in a deficit. You're already at a deficit and it's not working. Like, do you want, do you see what's happening here?
Mhm.
So a lot
Yeah.
of times it's more about shifting the focusing on good nutrition,
Yep.
giving them more food, and that can be very scary for them because it's like, well, wait a sec, because that's the opposite of what we're told, right? Like you gotta,
Yeah.
if you want to lose weight, you got to go in the caloric deficit, which
Mhm.
is true. But these are women that are coming in and they're training 4, 5, 6 days a week. They're doing 16 to 18,000 steps a day, and they're eating 13 to 1,500 calories. And their
Wow.
body is just like, it's
Starving.
tearing out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I do is go, okay, we're going to pull back. I want you to do 3 days a week training. I
Mhm.
want you to bring your steps down to, 10,000 steps a day, because I still think that's really good.
Mhm.
And we're going to give you not a whole bunch more, because if somebody comes in at 1,500 calories and you say, okay, I'm going to give you 2,000 calories, they see that number and they just freak out and they're not going to eat it anyways. So I have conversations with them about getting enough protein,
Mhm.
getting enough fats because it's good for your brain, it's
Yeah.
good for all these things. And let's talk about carbs, because
Mhm.
women tend to be incredibly fearful of carbs.
Yep.
So we have a conversation about carbs and what good carbs are and how the carbs are actually needed. Their body needs them. And so it's a very slow, gradual process at increasing their food intake, not taking away the working out, but they don't need to be doing 6 days a week. Their body,
Right.
we call it a restoration phase. Their
Yep.
body needs to restore, heal, and then we can start rebuilding them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I find so we kind of talked before we hopped on here about carbs, right? Carbohydrates. And you're right. It's the fear. And I mean, we've got the ketogenic diet, we've got the carnivore diet, and all of these are very specific. And you know
Mhm.
what? Maybe at some point in time in your life, you're going to do all of them, right? All at different times for different reasons. But I mean, ultimately, having a nutrition plan that has nutrients, micronutrients from a wide variety of foods is super important in most cases, right? You mentioned carbs, you mentioned if
Yeah,
good
and
fats
it's
and things
more
like that.
fun. I mean, it's more f I mean, who want
Right?
it's
It's
more I mean,
true.
food is food is meant to be enjoyed. It's
Yeah.
not meant to keep you prisoner. And that's the thing that makes me the most sad is when I'm, talking with a client and just in between the lines, what I'm really hearing is like, this person is really she's really made herself a prisoner to food. And it's
Yeah.
so sad. And I'm not saying, well, you go out and eat all the things, because that's not good
Yes.
either. Like I said, this is a
Everything in
very
moderation.
slow, yeah, it's a very slow healing process,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a lot of ways and more than just physical. Um,
Hmm.
but carbs are good and your body does need carbs. Now, if you're eating French fries 4 or 5 times a day, I don't necessarily think that that's the right way to go about,
Yeah.
consuming carbs. But having French fries once in a while with a cheeseburger is not the end of the world if it's something that you just, it's a birthday or you're on a vacation and you're at a really great burger joint. You're like, I'm going to have that burger and my fries. I'm still doing my steps. I'm still doing my training. I'm
Hmm.
actually still eating really well. I'm within my macro ranges. I don't see a problem with that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And And the other thing is too, I think that people have, I don't know if it's confusion or a misconception about good carbs and bad carbs,
Yeah,
right? So
definitely.
let's talk about that because it's something basic, right? That I think everybody needs to know. But I do think that there are people who think that all carbs are bad. And
Yeah.
then I think that there's also kind of a group where, they're not even sure which ones are good and which ones are bad.
Right. So they just try to avoid them all. And then what usually ends
Exactly.
up happening is a binge. Somewhere there's going to be a
Mhm.
binge
Yeah.
or overconsumption,
Yeah.
right? Because willpower, I mean, we all know that willpower isn't 100%. I mean, I do know people that fall in that. What is it? There's actually a scientific, whether it's 3% or some, it's a very small percentage of people like that their willpower is so
So
concrete
strong.
that they can actually,
Wow.
like just not do it, which I'm like, ugh,
Yeah.
ugh, not me. Um, because your body's always going to direct you to something. If your body's
Mhm.
starving,
Yeah.
unless there's some kind of underlying disease, and usually like that's more a psychological or emotional thing,
Yeah.
your body is usually going to make you reach for something,
Mhm.
to satisfy yourself. And usually it's going to be the quickest form of food you can get into yourself, which is usually going to be something that's very processed, very
Yep.
high in fat, very high in sugar, very high in a lot of sodium, a lot of the things that overall are not nutritionally dense.
Yep.
So, having a good plan and preparing it can help you avoid a lot of that. But when it comes to like good carbs and bad carbs, I look at food as like there really isn't any bad food.
Mhm.
I eat pizza. I like a glass of wine. I enjoy all the foods, but overall, my intake is very healthy, like nutritionally dense. I fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates.
Yep.
There's and they're also loaded with fiber and a lot of minerals and vitamins that our body needs.
Yep.
Taking them out of the diet, I think, is a terrible thing to do.
I
You
agree.
know?
Yeah.
Things like whole grains. I know there's a whole thing about, grains, and there's a whole belief, and I have met people that are on some of these very specific diets, and
Mhm.
it has worked for them, and it is working for them. And because it is, and they're thriving, great.
Yep.
Uh, but, in my opinion, like whole grains are, they're good for you. They're not bad for you. If you sit down and eat a whole loaf of multigrain bread, that's not a good choice. But a slice of multigrain bread toasted with an egg on it, or I mean, one of my favorite breakfasts is avocado toast with an egg.
Mhm.
That's a lot of fat in that breakfast. That's also carbohydrates,
Mhm. Yep.
but it fills me up. It's a great start to my day. And I'm not binging by 5 o'clock. I'm not going to
Mm.
the cupboards looking for
Starving.
chips and
Yeah,
things like that.
absolutely. Starving and going into that crash, right? Well, and I feel like just something kind of as you talk about breakfast with regards to even eating breakfast. I feel like now a lot of people, I have a lot of women trying to fast, right? They're trying to do these long fasts. And so they're not eating breakfast as soon as they get up and all these things. And I mean, I was always taught and I learned that, eating kind of within that hour window to fuel your metabolism to really get roaring, it was always a good idea. Give me your take on that. Like, how do you feel about fasting and that extended fast and things like that on a
Yeah.
daily basis?
Well, when it comes to fasting, it can really
Mhm.
work very well for some people.
Yep.
But I think if it's something that you want to do rather than just jumping, if you're like at home Googling and you think, oh, I'm going to try fasting, I really, really, really strongly recommend you speak with a coach or
Yeah.
a nutritionist, someone about how to do that for you. What are your goals? Like, what's your current weight? What's your
Mhm.
activity level like? What does your eating look like right now? What's your goal? So what is the intermittent fasting window that's going to work for you
Mhm.
to help you hit that goal? And it can work. Now, when I was training for bodybuilding, for me, I could not, there was this whole thing about fasted cardio versus not fasted
Right. Yep.
cardio. And one of the things that was really popular at the time was fasted cardio,
Yep.
but I could not do it. I was, getting dizzy and I was passing out and I was
Yep.
feeling sick. So my body was just like, no way. We need something in here before we can do it. And it didn't affect my training. Had I tried to push it, it probably would have affected my training. It
Yep.
probably would have affected my overall outcome. So again, it does come back to what's your body saying? Because on the other hand, I had teammates that fasted cardio was that was the way for them. That was the way to go for them. That is what was
Interesting.
best for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, it's there isn't a one size fits all with this. When it comes to one size fits all, I will say that the very best diet, because there is the ultimate diet,
Mhm.
everybody, which is the one that you have energy, you're getting quality sleep, you can get through your day, you can, you know, you can stay active and you have energy to do that, and you're actually enjoying your life. You want to stick to that diet
Yep.
that hits all of those points.
I agree.
Now, when the goal changes to something very specific, that may have to be altered, but still ultimately within hitting your goal, you still want to feel like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think that is the perfect top to this because it's true. Right? We all want to get out of bed and not have to drag ourselves out of bed in the morning, right? Want to get out of bed and have some energy, want to be able to get through the day, do the things we love to do. And, you know, I always like that 80-20 rule, right? Everything in moderation. If you want to have 20% of something that day or that meal or whatever that's maybe not quite as healthy, as long as the rest of the majority of it is, then you know, that's a good starting point. And
Right.
and something that's long-term achievable, right?
Yeah,
We're not here to make quick changes and then fall off the wagon in 20 days.
right. And that, you know, and that's something that is definitely sustainable into like healthy senior living. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure many of us have seen grandparents out playing with their grandkids.
Mhm.
Um, you know, seniors or like people in their, I mean, what is senior now? Because they're, you know, 50 is the new 30 and 60 is the new 40, whatever, you know,
It's true,
people that
right?
aren't in their 20s and 30s, people that are in their 50s,
Yeah.
60s, 70s, you know, playing baseball.
Yeah.
You know, even just like out walking their dog every day,
Mhm.
really active in their life, not active in that they're necessarily running marathons, although that does happen.
Mhm.
There is that, but having that kind of life, feeling that, you know, that optimal wellness, feeling like that is something you can sustain throughout your life. You just have to be willing to make changes as your body changes.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so tell us, I want to dig into just we'll do a quick wrap up, but what's on your agenda? What's your next goal? Can you share with us?
Oh, it's so much together. I came into 2020. Well, actually, I recently lost my father.
Oh, I'm sorry to
Um,
hear
Thank
that.
you.
Very
And
sorry
he
to hear
was
that.
really such a role model for me because he was so, um, you know, he was just so strong. And so he
Yeah.
was at one of his high school reunions. I think it was his 20-year reunion or 30-year reunion. He was voted the most well preserved.
Oh, wow.
Because he had such an active life. He was always active
Yeah.
in sports and he just enjoyed life
Mhm.
and he was always moving. And I think really after, you know, just this past December after losing him and then coming home, I was thinking, wow, because last year it was like just grind, work,
Yeah.
work, work.
Yeah.
And I was going to the gym a little bit less. I was skipping meals and I thought, you know, and I wasn't feeling the best. I was getting a little tired and I thought, I have to reset. I
Yeah.
have to reset because all these things that I'm teaching, I have to make sure I'm making time in my own life to make those a priority.
Do them. Yeah.
So my goal really is it's very simple. I'm scaling back on making myself 100% available to everybody else.
Mhm.
And I'm going to start making myself available to me more in 2024. And yeah, just like really, as corny as it sounds, just really living my best life and just being an example of that. Because I think
Yeah.
if I'm, you know, to continue working, I'm going to be taking on more clients this year.
Mhm.
And the best way to advertise and market that is to just be that.
Yep. I agree 100%. Well, I think that's an amazing goal. And now tell our viewers and listeners if they want to find you, work with you, tell them how they do that,
Okay,
please.
well, if you want to work with me, the easiest and the best is to go to theeducateddieter.com. And you will get what happens is you I think it says like, you know, to start here or what you get a free consult with William Grazione, who's
Mhm.
like our master coach and my boss. And so you get a free consultation with him. And if you mention that you want to work with me, he will set that up. But he pretty much vets
Amazing.
everybody that comes through
Mhm.
because not everybody is ready for what they say they are.
Yep.
And also sometimes it's like, oh, like you want to work with a coach, but you want to compete. Well, here, he's like the matchmaker in our company. But if you want to
Love
work with
it.
me, you go to theeducateddieter.com. When you're speaking with William, you can request me. You can also message me Instagram. I'm at TM Fines, Fines. I am also on Facebook, Tonya Fines. I'm pretty easy to find. Put my name in Google, you're gonna find me. I'm not that I'm not hiding anywhere.
She's not hiding. It's okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. And podcast again, so Strong by Design
Yeah,
podcast show. Make sure you look
yeah.
that up.
Yeah,
It
you
was
were
on
strong by
Spotify.
design. So yeah,
Yeah.
Spotify, and I know for sure Spotify and the Apple iTunes.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing. Always love just hearing more about health, more about what we can do to be healthy, to thrive. And I just think that, yeah, you have so much to share, which is amazing. And the work you're doing is amazing as well. And yeah, so thanks for being on the show. And I wish you the best of luck for your goal. I am sure that you're going to put yourself first and it's all going to roll out exactly as it should. And so, for everyone watching, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you give this episode a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're listening on your favorite podcast host, make sure you like this episode. Follow us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.